Blockbuster sensation Palworld has become the second highest all-time peak in Steam history. That is incredible considering the numbers that you see right here. The number of Steam users currently playing Palworld has exceeded 1.8 million. Palworld has not only become one of the most popular games in recent memory with 3 days of early access launch, but also one of the most controversial. A subset of artists, game developers, and other concerned gamers have taken to accusing the game of two things mainly. The first one, as you can see from this chart right here, is ripping off bits and pieces of Pokemon to assemble their pals. And second, the developer, PocketPair, is accused of making their hit game with AI tools after a number of tweets starting from 2021 from the studio's CEO goes viral. And we have those tweets here live on screen. If you pass it through the filter of AI, the image is often not of a specific thing. So maybe the copyright issue will be resolved? Question mark. I was surprised to see that the world is actually moving in that direction. In about 30 years, the general public's perception of copyright may have changed considerably. And as you can see from a 2021 tweet on the right side of your screen, the AI has evolved so much that I can no longer tell which one is a Pokemon. Left side Pokemon, right, or a like monster Pokemon. The right is the real one. So the follow-up is there's more. So it's not just two tweets that people are picking out. There's 4 different tweets of the CEO of PocketPair who created Palworld loving the idea of AI stuff. So he says, no, instead, please play AI art Imposter. This is a real-time image generation game. Requires 4 friends. And also last, I recently saw the same thing in a video and had the same impression. We might see true AI-powered games on GPT-4 this year. And that was from April 9th, 2023. So, Henrik, the actual hard evidence that this has happened, however, does not exist as of yet. But I couldn't help but wonder, especially since our conversation from last week's show, isn't this what all the voice actors are all freaking out about? Like, why would the Screen Actors Guild sign a deal with an AI company without addressing the safeguards to protect one's piracy? How is that you able to even detect any of these kind of blueprints?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Detection of this sort of thing is going to be really, really hard. There's going to be a constant battle in the next few years, I'm sure, maybe even beyond that, of people trying to create tools and ways to detect whether or not something is AI generated. And it's going to get harder and harder, even for an actual person to know, really. We have to rely on tools made by people, probably even just like counter AI in a sense, trying to detect the AI in the first place. But when this whole conversation got brought up, like, oh, did this game use AI? It really reminded me of this conversation that I had with one of my friends, one of my close friends. And he had this idea recently. It was like, let's just make a game studio. And we haven't done that, because that's a big undertaking. But it's becoming easier for people to just say, let's make a game studio, and then let's use these AI tools to kind of fill in the gaps where we don't have the skills to really do some certain things, like create code and really create models and things like that take a lot of not necessarily high-end skill, but like some level of understanding, to be able to put together these things. And AI is making it a lot easier for people to get into development of games as a result of the tools that are being developed. And I think that's really why these big studios are looking at the tools, because they're looking at them as a way of speeding up the process. Rather than it take like 8 years to make a game, it might just take a couple, depending on how prevalent the tools become. I will say, though, when it comes to using AI to kind of rip off content and cut corners and things like that, that's where I don't agree. That's where I think you really have to have someone come in there and still observe that the AI is being used in a way that's, I guess the word to use to be like ethical, because if it's not being used in a proper way, then you are going to get a lot of people, like in the case of this, where even there isn't any evidence that they're using AI, but people are thinking that they are because it seems like it might be a little bit lazy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there was an excellent conversation when it came around, this whole AI conversation. And I know Pierce Morgan, he's got a show called Uncensored, and he had Neil deGrasse Tyson on the show. And I thought Neil deGrasse Tyson said an excellent point about AI that I think a lot of people need to even consider when it comes to this whole gaming conversation that we're having around Palworld. You know, AI can only really give you the kind of information that's only available on the internet, not an outside source. It's not a free thinker as of yet, right? You know, like, it's like, you know, is the doomsday clock there? Is it going to turn into Terminator? Is it going to think on its own? No. So there is a true possibility that, you know, AI potentially was a text to prompt saying, hey, develop me a game like Pokemon with guns and give me all these kind of elements that can kind of cater towards this experience. But before Henrik and I start to continue this conversation even further, I think it's important to showcase the commentary around Palworld that has been explosive online with the following. So the first comment that we got here is from Asmon Gold. The success of Palworld proves that the only thing customers actually care about is a good game. AI, slavery, bestiality, copyright infringement. It's a video game. These are pretend problems that people don't actually care about. Make good game equals people buy game. Simple. Everyone talking about Palworld and it using AI to make its designs, I feel like that's because AI is so prominent now. But people forget this game had a trailer featuring lots of the designs 3 years ago. This game didn't come out of nowhere and clearly had work put in. Rumors of Palworld automating art theft via AI are overblown. They have utilized traditional approaches to art theft. And the bottom tweet that he was responding to says, to, quote, accidentally, end quote, create a complex model mesh with so near exact proportions is practically impossible. To repeat that improbability throughout your roster doesn't pass the sniff test. Hashtag Palworld, hashtag Pokemon. Palworld's overwhelming success is the first step in the normalization of generative AI slope games, which is really, really depressing. 10 years ago, an asset flip game like this would have been relentlessly ridiculed. On the Palworld AI/copyright issues, it is vital to remember the vast majority of gamers simply do not care about the behind-the-scenes issues of games. They're not on Reddit. They're not in the Discord groups. They're not reading forums. They're not even reading tweets. And last, this entire thread perfectly summarizes a lot of what I see in Palworld too. There is no proof that Palworld is just AI generated, and it's frankly shocking to see so many people just run with it. Okay, yeah, but maybe they started off with the mesh, you know, and they did art theft, and then maybe to finish half of the game, they used AI. I don't know. We're going to soon figure that out pretty soon. But Henrik, I mean, whether it's AI or stolen assets, who's to blame?
That's the question, I guess, right? That everyone's trying to figure out who is the problem here. And I don't think it's AI because, like a lot of people made a point about, is that this game didn't come out of nowhere. This game was already worked on. Clearly, they had people actually on their team working on assets and making sure that they were, you know, what they are now. I will say, to quote Oscar Wilde, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So are we now going to say that all those Souls-like games that look like the Dark Souls games almost to the T, are those now also in the same realm of, oh, this is a bad game because it copies this other game so heavily?
See, that's a good point, because you can also make the reference between Spider-Man and Superman. Spider-Man works at the Daily Bugle. Where does Superman work? At the Daily Planet. Oh my Lanta, they didn't even try to switch it up. Or what about Invincible Season 2, Part 2 coming out? Doesn't that kind of remind you of DC? Doesn't that kind of remind you of Marvel? No one necessarily owns a superhero, but I do have to kind of feel like some of the blame has to go towards Valve on a level. And the reason why I say this is if a good majority of people are saying, okay, AI is out the window, okay, let's throw that out. But if we're getting like a third of the community all saying there's art theft, well, have we not remembered last year? Only Up? Remember that game?
That's true.
That game was literally taken off in July over stolen assets.
Yeah, but I think that the differentiation here is if it's stolen assets in the sense of they just took assets from the store and didn't create stuff based on other things. Because if they created things based off of other things, those are their own assets that they've made themselves. Whereas an asset flip, like one of those commenters said, is you go to, you know, whatever engine, the Unreal Engine, Unity store engine, their stores, and you just basically pull assets that other people have made out of packs, or, you know, not even just packs, just, you know, individual by themselves. You buy them and you just put them in the game. It kind of, that's really what Only Up was. It was just a bunch of assets being put into a game and not even really much.
So are you saying it was
involved.
just a bit more easier to detect with that space compared to this one where it's going to take a while? But
yeah,
you know,
because it's most likely just going to be, oh, we got inspired by this design from Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point. I mean, even on my TikTok, you know, I was even kind of making a joke. It's like, guys, you could be saying that they took from Pokemon, but hey, did Pokemon take inspiration from Dragon Quest? Because Dragon Quest came first. So there's a lot to blame.
And I'm sure Dragon Quest took inspiration from something else as well.
Exactly. That is so true. But, you know, on a final note on this for me, you know, I have to laugh because I do think Asmongold and a few other people did perfectly lay it out. A majority of gamers just don't give a shit. If the game's good, you're going to play the game. And instead of actually being more concerned about AI, we got groups like PETA, for example. They just went viral this morning around Palworld, and you're thinking, why is PETA involved in the video game space? Well, they are upset and have heard from vegans, because supposedly, I just learned this as of today, month of January is veganary. It's vegan month. So a game like Palworld, which allows you to have the opportunity to eat your pals, or you know, or make them go to work and harvest and all that kind of fun jazz. Well, they are calling, and I kid you not, they are calling for a vegan guide created inside that game. Have we gone a bit too far? I mean, think of it like
when
this.
Does PETA not want to be in headlines?
Yeah, right. I mean, where was PETA when Baldur's Gate 3, Game of the Year, by the way, at the Game Awards, where were they when animal cruelty and bestiality was the major news for 3 months straight, where you can literally have sex with the bear in the video game? No word from PETA. And then the minute...
a little bit different considering it was a druid in a wild shape, but... I mean, yeah, still a bear.
A little bit different? I mean, come on, bestiality, that's animal cruelty. You'd think, like, if you did something like that, oh my gosh, you'd think that they would be all over it, but clearly that was not the case, and oh my Lanta. So, hey, we want to know from you gamers, do you believe that Palworld is AI generated? Or did the creators at PocketPair steal assets? Or
yeah,
flip
which side
assets?
are you on?
Which side are you on?